And if you can just, in your everyday work, say yes to a creative idea without judging yourself or judging somebody else, then I think you can start to adopt an improviser's mindset. And I think it'll really work for you.
Search, social, and mobile. These are the agents of change. Welcome to the weekly podcast where we unravel the mysteries behind digital marketing so that you can succeed and grow your business. And now, your host, Rich Brooks.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Agents of Change podcast. If you're new to the show, this is the podcast that is for entrepreneurs, marketers, and business owners everywhere that are looking to reach more of their ideal customers through search, social, and mobile marketing. We're up to episode 242, and this show is powered by Flight New Media. Now, being an entrepreneur, a business owner, or a marketer requires you to think on your feet. New ideas, new opportunities, new competitors are coming at you fast and furious, and you never know when or from which direction. The lessons you learn in an improv class or stage are similar, and Kathy Klotz-Guest has seen the parallels. She knows marketing and improv, and she's here to show you how the two intertwine so that you can create more engaging, memorable marketing messages. Now, before we get to that, just wanted to let you know that we have been working hard here in the Flight New Media offices on the upcoming Agents of Change Digital Marketing Conference, coming to you on September 20th and 21st, 2018. Now, we've got about half of our speakers locked down, including our opening keynote, the amazing Joel Comm. We've also got 4 workshops set up for the following day, the 21st, and also something else I'm working on secret that I'll hopefully be announcing here in the next couple weeks. Anyways, tickets are officially going on sale to the public on May 1st, although I might release a few of them early. Now, if you aren't on our email list, this is the time to get on there. Here's how it works, and this is why you want to be on it, because first, the thing we do is we tell all of our alumni, in other words, all the people who have attended an Agents of Change conference in the past, and we give them first access to tickets. About 24 hours, 48 hours after that, then we send out to our full email list for Agents of Change. And then after that, we open it up to the public. So we've got 100 tickets that are marked as early bird tickets. Once they're gone, they're gone. And because we sold tickets at the end of last year's conference, we've only got about 50 of those tickets left. So I expect that they're going to go very quickly and sell out well before we end the quote-unquote early bird stage, which goes until July 1st. This is why I'm giving you the heads up that if you're not on the email list, you want to head on over to theagentsofchange.com, sign up for the email list right now. Fastest way to do it is at the bottom of every page, there's a sticky footer, and you just sign up for updates, and you're going to be all set. Okay, let's go check out that interview with Kathy now. Kathy Klotz-Guest is a speaker, author, and improviser. A former tech marketing executive, she is the founder of Keeping It Human. Her mission is to help companies unlock more big ideas with improv so employees and customers thrive. A live streamer, the #YesAndBrand show. She is the author of Stop Boring Me, How to Create Kick-Ass Marketing Content, Product, and Ideas Through the Power of Improv. Named a top marketing read by Inc.com. She's been published in fancy places, including Convince and Convert, Marketing Profs, and Huffington Post. Kathy studied at Comedy Sports Second City and Bats and still performs improv. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Rich. I'm happy to be here.
Now, obviously, you do improv. That's your thing. So how did you get involved in marketing, and what are the connections between marketing and improv as you see it?
It's such a great question. So a lot of people assume that, some people think I started marketing and moved over, or, started in improv and moved over. And the reality is I was parallel pathing it. Like a lot of people, I was doing both. So I came up through high-tech marketing, and 5-6 days a week, I was hitting comedy stages. And so I would work all day, study, and perform at night. And I parallel path for about 15 years. And I found that I kept trying to bring, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, I would try to bring threads of improv into the work that I was doing, and it bled over. And I kept having these aha moments that, marketing and improv are very similar. So much of what I was doing was really storytelling for brands, and improv and comedy is all about the truth on steroids. It's really the heart and soul of the truth. And there was so many parallels. So I eventually left to start my own business. But it really, I think the journey for me was doing them at the same time. So improv really made me a better storyteller, made me so much more flexible, adaptable, agile, all these different things in my work. So yeah, I didn't make the leap from one to the other. I really did them at the same time. And I found that if I couldn't really serve two masters equally unless I blended them together. And so I ended that fragmentation and really started keeping it human to be able to do that.
Now, I think it makes sense that you could take your improv career and move it over to marketing, but did you ever have an experience where you were on stage and were able to pull from your marketing experience?
Absolutely. Oh, no question about it. I think, being an improviser, you have to sort of pull from things and I'd be in the middle of a show and play an office nerd or whatever, and all of a sudden I'm talking about marketing lingo and marketing buzzwords and things that sort of make a scene better, things that are the seat and the source of great comedy. I mean, the way that we talk about brands, the way that we use buzzwords, the way that we write emails, and the way that we talk to customers, man, if somebody talked to you like that in a bar, you'd punch them in the face or walk away. You'd never listen to them. There's no credibility. And so that ridiculousness is great fodder for the stage, because the truth of it is that it's anything but human. So it's great comedy.
So, Kathy, I'm not going to lie to you. Improv, even watching other people doing improv, fills me with anxiety. How can I overcome that and channel my own creativity to develop more engaging content?
So that is totally, I hear that a lot, and I so get that. And I think the thing that I would remind people is that we're all improvisers on the business stage. You already are an improviser. You may not self-label. You're not out there saying, look at me, I'm an improv guru. I'm an improv ninja. But you are an improviser. And we're all, every day in the business capacity, we are faced with choices and too much stuff coming at us. And we have to make choices in the moment. So we're always yes-anding whatever comes our way. We just may not realize we're doing it. So I think one is to recognize that because we already have that capacity, in some ways, we already are improvisers. The second thing is when we get a choice to say yes to something creative, and we've got these kind of negative inclinations because human beings, we sometimes are wired to look for reasons to say no or to not do something. But when you get an inclination and you think, this might actually work, the thing to ask yourself is, how can I say yes and to this idea? How can I say yes, let's try this and let's add on? Or how can I say yes and to a customer who's coming to me with an idea, or maybe another, marketer in my group, or, somebody else in my company who is an internal customer? How can I say yes and find a way to make that work? And if you can just, in your everyday work, say yes to a creative idea without judging yourself or judging somebody else, then I think you can start to adopt an improviser's mindset. And I think it'll really work for you.
All right. Now, I know that yes and is a big part of improv. Can you just kind of explain that to the audience?
Sure. So yes and, we worship at the altar of yes and. It is the central tenet of our faith. And it really, honestly, I really believe, so I've been doing improv for 16 years, and I teach improv and I perform still. And the thing I would say is that all improv, I think, can really be boiled down to this idea of agree and add on. So what does yes and mean? It doesn't mean you're going to do an idea, but for purposes of the way improvisers work on a stage, is that by saying yes to each other and adding on to an idea, we move the scene forward. Think about it this way. What happens in a scene has a counterpart in the office. Imagine you're in a brainstorming meeting and everyone's yes butting, yes but, yes but, yes but, yes but, that won't work, that won't work. We don't end up anywhere at the end of the day. Scenes go nowhere. Our meetings go nowhere. We've all been in that situation. Ideas get butted all the time. Well, what if we flipped that and said, look, the improviser's motto is the way that we move a scene forward is somebody will, endow me as a mom. I don't say, but we don't, but I don't have kids. Well, then I've denied that offer. But if you come to me and say, hey, mom, what's for dinner? I'm like, well, like all good vampires, I'm making sure that it has blood because you need to grow up to be a strong vampire. So I'm going to add on to your idea that, yes, I am a mom, and I'm going to heighten that, what we call idea heightening. I'm adding on to that not only am I a mom, but I'm a vampire mom. Now, that's a new piece of information, and we just created something that didn't exist before. So that's the idea of yes-anding. I'm the offer of I'm a mom, and then adding on, and we call that idea heightening. And that idea heightening can be used for great content, for brainstorming, for all kinds of innovation.
All right, great, because that brings us back to the whole idea. Obviously, we talk a lot about marketing content on this show. Mm-hmm. So, and there's a lot of small businesses listening in. I see a lot of small businesses putting out content on social media or in blogs, and they're getting little to no response. What do you think the problem is?
There's a lot of content out there chasing too little mind share. And if you think about it from the perspective of you and I and your audience and everybody's audience, we're just tapped out. We are mentally tapped out. There's just too much coming at us. So when you see that happening repeatedly, it's probably a combination of things. And the biggest thing it's going to be is that something just isn't resonating with your audience. So if you know who your audience is, you know who your ideal customer is, and you know the kinds of things that they like or they talk about, find a way to yes and that. If they're talking about the problems that they're having with billing, or they're talking about the problems they're having with getting publicity or traction or whatever the big thing is, find a way to yes and that. Take that idea and ask yourself, what are ways that we can talk about this main problem that maybe we've solved, and we can create content around solving that problem that will help that customer base. So listen to the kinds of things that people are talking about. What are they liking? If you have an ideal customer in mind, what types of things are they consuming? Because that's going to tell you where their issues are and what kinds of content you need to be thinking about.
Okay. So if we are listening to our customers, and God help us if we're not, but if we're listening to our customers, we know the kind of stuff that they're looking for. What are some of the key concepts of improv that we can use to make that content more engaging, more memorable? I know you talked about yes and maybe that's the main tenet and we should focus on that, but are there other things as well in improv that's going to take mediocre content, or it's valuable but it's not exciting, and really take it to the next level?
Right. So totally, I guess the second gospel, according to improv, don't be boring. And there's no reason to be boring. The foundation of great scenes is really storytelling. And so one of the things that we say in improv is that everybody has a want. So here's the difference between, in a great story, everybody has a want. Your audience wants something. What is it that they really want? And the difference between just a straight story and comedy is that in comedy, a person's going to chase a need because they have that want and they can't help themselves. They're going to chase it, but they're going to get blocked. But they're going to keep getting up and chasing it, and they can't help themselves. They're compelled to chase what they need. Well, remembering that, think about the way that you tell stories. Most people are really boring because we're in transaction mode. So how can you be less transactional and more transformational and talk about a story about your life that everybody can relate to? Talk about it in a really open and vulnerable way. And if you do that, you won't be boring. So there's that. Go ahead and tell a very, very, very deep story. There's ways to incorporate all kinds of different storytelling devices. But I'd say after kind of yes and, one of the big things is really understanding that story and that need and who the characters are, character development. A lot of times when we do tell stories, we do such short shrift to stories. We don't even, we might tell you a name of a person in a story, but we don't tell you all that, who they are, what they're wearing, and what it smelled like, and what the conflict they were facing was. I want to know what that conflict is. I want you to go deep into what the change is by the end of the story. So I think it really is just great storytelling devices. Even if it's not funny, you won't be boring.
Well, I guess that's the next question, because what if you or your brand or your product isn't funny or playful? What if it's very serious? How can you tell a story that's engaging? I mean, it's like, I hear what you're saying on one hand, but if I'm selling insurance, how exciting can I make a story about a man or a woman buying insurance?
But is it really about buying the insurance, or is it about something else in their life? Here's the thing. It's never about the product. It's never about the product. And guess what? When people write me checks for work that I do, they do not care about marketing. I don't care. Get me results. So there's something deeper going on. And if you understand and you are in insurance or banking, why do you think people bank with you? Do they really care to spend their time banking? No, they don't care. But maybe you find out that X percent of your clients, and you're a bank or you're in insurance, have kids in college. What if you started talking about what it's like to have kids in college? And what if you actually use that as kind of the lens of all the things that can go wrong? Allstate did it very masterfully with Mayhem, and it's very humorous. And your idea heightening all the things that could go wrong, and it's not boring because we're laughing at the central truth, which is stuff goes wrong when you got teenagers. So find the things that they care about. The other thing about improv I'll say is mashups. Take ideas that you think don't belong together and explore them. I did a workshop for a ride-sharing service recently, and you can probably name who it is and guess who it is. And one of the things that they discovered in finding content is, nobody wants to talk about ride-sharing. But here's the thing. They did some deep dives, and they found that a big percent of their audience were pet owners. And not only one pet, had multiple pets. So they've got a large fan base of people out where I live in the Bay Area, of people who use ride-sharing services that are also animal lovers. I mean, you can do tons of stuff like bring your animal to work day, or bring your animal in the ride service day. Ride sharing for pets. Create a video on what if in this alternate world we had ride sharing for pets, or we had a birthday service. It'll take your pet to that ridiculous dog birthday party. I mean, there's so many fun things you can do. The thing you always have to think about, Rich, is that it cannot be so dead on about buy my product, nobody cares. Find out the things that are important in your user's life and talk about those things. That's where content gets really meaningful and fun and not boring.
So my understanding of improv is that it's very interactive, sometimes just with the people on the stage, sometimes even with people off the stage. If and maybe this is more tactical than you usually get, but if you've got some idea, whether it's pet sharing or ride sharing for pets, whatever it may be, and you want to tell that story, how can you make it? Are there tactics that you can use in a Facebook post, in an Instagram post, in a podcast, whatever it is, that's going to get it to be more memorable, and maybe more engaging? Because these days everybody's focused on how do I get people to respond to me on Facebook? Because that's all that Mark Zuckerberg cares about today.
Yes, that in elections, apparently, and ad revenue from elections, if I can say that. Well, here's the thing. I think it's a great question, and it's one that I think a lot about. And there's a term that we use in the performance world. And again, I'm an MBA who came from marketing, who also happens to have 2 decades on stages. So one of my favorite devices to use is, in performance, we call it breaking the fourth wall. And breaking the fourth wall is exactly what you just described, Rich. It's this idea that not only are improvisers talking to each other, but we're involving the audience. So that wall comes down with the audience. So what ends up happening is maybe we, to surprise ourselves, we'll get an audience member and we'll bring them into something, or we will, at the very least, get a suggestion. We start the scene off with a suggestion from the audience. Well, what if you actually started thinking about your content in a very collaborative fashion? And here's what I mean. What if you actually, instead of just posting stuff about your trips, what if you asked, well, what's your favorite trip? Or I'm going to start a story about a trip, and I'd love it if the audience added their story, or one line at a time. Or, what's the take the third picture in your phone right now and write up a funny story about it. Engage your audience and invite them to create that with you. So if you don't think of yourself as having to create all your own content, and you don't have to, you can involve your audience. That stuff tends to work because people like sharing their own stuff.
Okay, that makes sense. But so I have one other big concern.
Yes, and.
Yes. And I have this other concern.
And I have another concern, yes.
I have to practice that. Okay.
We all do. Most people but don't realize it.
Absolutely. There are a lot of people out there who are overly sensitive and are willing to be offended over just about anything these days. Should we be worried about offending people? They seem so oversensitized. It seems like anything we say that's even vaguely interesting might be offensive to some people. Is that a reason to kind of play it closer to the vest?
No, absolutely not. I've said this before, and again, I came out of marketing for corporations. So you're talking to somebody who was in the world of tech, and some of these tech brands can be conservative. And I'll say this: you always design for your ideal audience. Always. If your ideal audience loves pets, talk about pets. If one person complains, but they're not your ideal audience, who cares? We are living in a world today where you're right. Some people will look for a reason. And if it's not your audience, you can't necessarily get worried about it or distracted. I think you cannot play it safe today. I think the most risky thing to do today is to play it safe. That's the most risky thing to do, because there are brands out there that are super creative and they're doubling down on taking risks. And you don't have to bet the farm. However, I would advise even small businesses, no matter what industry you're in, to get a little outside your norm when it comes to content and start to experiment a little bit with all the different things that are sort of surrounding your product and expand a little bit, because that's where the traction is. That's what matters. If you can find the things that your users are interested in and talk about those, not your products, they don't really care about you. Find the interests of your audience and weave those into your content. That's going to, in the long run, do more wonders than anything you could possibly imagine. So don't worry about the onesie-twosie people if they're not your ideal audience. Yes, everybody is easily offended today, so don't worry about it. That's my recommendation.
All right. Are there any other lessons from improv that you want to share with us right now that can help us with our marketing, whether it's how we market, whether it's the messages that we get out there? What's one last thing that you want to leave us with?
I think the biggest thing is the concept I talked about earlier, which is idea heightening. Most of us stop at the obvious stuff. And what yes and is just a process to get to this idea of idea heightening. So I really encourage people to really think about, when you start with an idea, most of our brains will just go to the obvious place, and we do stop there. But the really good ideas are maybe 4, 5, 6 layers removed from that. And here's what I mean. If I told you about working for a ride sharing service, we'd talk about all the ways we could use ride sharing. But if we start to introduce, well, maybe there's pets. Oh, maybe they like pets. Maybe we could do something with pets. Then we start to go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers removed from that. And now we're getting to some creative ideas that never would have existed. So I'd say this to the audience. Don't be afraid to take your idea to kind of a little bit of a heightened, exaggerated, crazy place. You may not end up doing that idea, but it will be better and further out and more creative than where you started. So the first couple of ideas aren't going to be the most creative. Keep going. We call that, the lower third. And that the best ideas are that last third where your brain just keeps struggling, and then all of a sudden you have a breakthrough and you have all these different ideas. So we use that on the stage, very much so. That's how we create really amazing, compelling stories that we just heighten. We just keep heightening. What else could happen here? What else could happen here? So I think that'll be a really great way for anybody to ask, what else could I do? How could I heighten my current content and what I'm talking about?
I think that's great advice, because I think we've gotten to the point where almost everybody knows how to run a Facebook ad campaign or an Instagram ad campaign or post something to Snapchat. What's really going to be memorable now and what's going to separate you from your competition is that original piece of content and how creative and interesting and engaging it is.
Absolutely. And force yourself to, and if it's a rule, if some people like heuristics, and I'm not really in the business of necessarily giving rules. However, I will say this, if you can, maybe you adopt a rule like, Coca-Cola has with their content studio, which is that they spend a good, maybe 30% of their money and time in ideas that they think are kind of out there because they're looking for ways to push that creative envelope. So maybe just 30% of your ideas out there are maybe a little bit edgier than what you might do, and see what happens. Because I have a feeling that, I know for me, I've discovered when I've kind of gone there, those have been some of my best performing content pieces. So do yourself a favor, at least explore on a regular basis and make that a regular part of the content that you do.
Awesome. Kathy, this has been great. I'm sure some people want to check out your book. They want to check out your website. Where can we find you online?
Sure. You can go to keepingithuman.com. That's my business kind of front. And you can find things there on my blog. You can find out more about the books I've got. I've got a couple books. They're in Amazon.com. And you can get them other places digitally, but you can also get them on Amazon.com. And you can also follow me. My Twitter handle is @Kathy Klotz-Guest, no hyphen. That's the best place to find me.
Fantastic. This has been great. I really want to thank you for your time, Vampire Mom.
Anytime. Thank you.
Are you ready for your first improv class? Are you ready to get up on stage? Well, if you're not, and maybe you want to listen to this podcast again, or maybe you want to read the full transcript of this podcast, or you want to see all of the links that Kathy shared with us, just head on over to theagentsofchange.com/242. That's right, you can find the entire podcast, the show notes, the transcript, everything else over at theagentsofchange.com/242. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, be sure to sign up for the Agents of Change email list if you're interested in getting one of those very limited early bird discounts for this year's conference. That's all for this week. Be sure to tune in again a week from now, and I'll talk to you again in 7.
That wraps up another Agents of Change podcast. Join us next week for another auditory adventure where we tackle search, social, and mobile marketing.